Whenever I talk about slide writing on my channels, I get comments from you saying, who needs this anymore? You can just use Claude for that. So let's put that to the test. Welcome to another coffee break here on the channel. My name is Heinrich, a former McKinsey consultant. And in this video, we will give Claude the task to create a consulting grade slide. I will look at it, provide my humble feedback to it. What already works very well, where I still see the gaps. We will then compare it to an actual slide of Boston Consulting Group, and I will also share with you tips what you can do to get the best possible results out of Claude, including a skill file that I use myself for these slides. So let's get started. And the starting point for me is this page that you see right here. This is from an actual recent document from Boston Consulting Group that I found online. And this is, I'd say, a typical consulting style page, nothing too complex, nothing too complicated. So I think a fair test that now we can give to Claude. There are some things I will actually also critique on this specific page. Let's maybe leave that for later. But what I did here as a starting point is that I essentially took the contents of this slide and transformed it into a prompt. So I gave some background here that the system is supposed to create the slide in the style of the leading consulting firms. And then I provided the content of the slide as you can see it right here. So this is essentially what's written down here. And then I also provided a color palette, the From Learning color palette, to have some stylistic guidance as well. And so I will take all that and I will now go to Claude and I will paste it here in a chat. And I will now let it run. You can see I'm using Fables, so the latest model of Claude. And I will actually in parallel also go to PowerPoint, go to Claude here, and also try the very same thing with the PowerPoint Claude Assistant. So this is a different tool that Claude provides to directly within PowerPoint work and build slides. And so let's use that to compare also what exactly works better. So the slide was now created both inside Claude and inside the PowerPoint, Claude for PowerPoint interface. So let's check this out. Let's have a look at this in detail and see how these models performed and how we actually assess the quality. And let's start with the design from Claude that Claude provided. And here we can first of all, of course, also compare it to the Boston Consulting slide. I would argue that at first sight, first of all, what you can clearly see here with the Claude example is that this has this certain Claude look and feel to it. So if you have already now several times used Claude to create PowerPoint slides, you recognize such a PowerPoint slide whenever you see it. And this is for sure such a slide that you can directly recognize as a Claude slide. And overall, I must say this slide does look good. It is a solid page, a page that also is far better than the last time I ran this test. I will link above here a video where just a few months ago I tested something rather similar, and you can already see that these systems significantly improved just within a few months, and it's very likely that now if you give it even more time, it will improve even further. That being said, let's carve out some of the things that are still somewhat off, that are not really perfect. And first of all, let's here talk about some basic layout and consideration space. You can see here that in this arrow, there is too close to the text, right? So this looks a bit cramped. Typically, you want more padding around the text if you include it like this. Same here at the bottom, where essentially the text is almost actually going beyond the border of this colored background. Here also in terms of now the color scheme, that's likely not ideal, this dark blue on gray scheme. In addition to that, what's also rather uncommon, what typically you want to avoid is a setup where behind your regular text, you have these like big colored backgrounds. So this doesn't really look super professional. It reduces contrast. If you are printing out documents, you will waste lots of ink. So this is typically what you want to avoid. If you use it more to underline hierarchy. So there would be like something like a title element. This is then where you would include it, or for such a takeaway box like this, if you would want to then work with that, that is of course fine. Next thing is inconsistent use of of font sizes. So typically in the body of the slide, maybe, but this is already contested, with the exception of titles like this, you want elements to be on the same font size. You can see here that this is 10.5, this is now 12.5, so that's not really ideal. This is 9, this also for sure doesn't make sense at all, also from a logical perspective. So this here is somewhat the title, but this is then in a smaller font size than the overall font here to the right. Another issue typically that you see with these AI created slides is that text is often created in big paragraphs instead of bullet point style. So in consulting slides, as you can also see here on the slide example, you try to go as much as possible in bullet point style. And this also means that you want to de-word it. You don't want to write text, you don't want to write paragraphs like you are writing sentences in a book, like 100% grammatically complete sentences with all the filler words, etc. So this is what you want to avoid. So almost never you will have setups where you write full sentences one after the other. Instead, you break it down into bullet points. Last but not least, here you also have this logic where you have essentially a repetition of dimensions. So you can see that here is a section with human role. Here is another section with human role. Here is another section with human role. So this is always an opportunity if you see pages like this to simplify, to reduce the marginality and avoid these unnecessary repetitions. But beyond that, I must say it actually is already a very good page. It is capturing the essence also of the text very well. And let's now look at the other example from the Claude PowerPoint plugin. And I must say at first sight, the first look and feel of this page is actually better. And this may be a little bit by chance, so based on also some other tests I ran before I now created this video, I must say that on average, this Claude PowerPoint template still created worse outcomes than actually creating it in Claude. This is, I must say, an example where it's the opposite. I like the overall look and feel better. Still many things are, of course, repeated, the human role topic, the paragraph topic, etc. You can see here that now it again relies on M dashes. So whenever you have these long dashes, so-called M dashes, this is just a sure sign that something was created by AI, because no human ever uses these long dashes. Now inside my Claude, I have an overarching system prompt where these M dashes are essentially ruled out, which is why it's not created in there. But here in the PowerPoint plugin, to my knowledge, the overarching regular Claude instructions from your account are not applied yet. Let's now talk about how you can actually help Claude to create even better slides like the one I just showed you. And what I will share here with you today is a skill file that I created. This is a markdown file, essentially a long prompt, where you can see lots of instructions I put together based on all the best practices I teach here at From Learning, including what an action title is, layout principles, etc., that now you can provide as an input to Claude as a so-called skill in Claude. Or you can also set this up with Copilot, Microsoft Copilot. In Copilot, it's called a so-called agent. You can provide this as an input to help the system create even better slides. And I will offer this to you as a free download, link to that in the video description, where you can download this skill file and then you can use it to just create professional slide presentations. And of course, in Copilot or in Claude, you can also formally set it up as a skill in Claude. But if you don't want to do that, you can of course just also create it like here, and I can just upload here to the chat and write something like, this file includes instructions how to create professional slides. Please recreate the slide with this instructions in mind. And so let's see what this indeed does and if the slide is now better. And you can see that it already identifies a few points where now improvements are needed. And actually I would agree with all the points made here. So first of all, it includes this instruction to avoid these colored fills behind text. This is what we just discussed. It talks about now some layout improvements, this basic principle of slides being tables. And this also alludes to this dimensionality reduction, where this element shouldn't be repeated over and over again. It talks about improvements to the action title, to the so what, improvements in grammar, bullet points, structure, etc. So let's see how far it indeed gets. So it did create it. Let's open it in PowerPoint to properly check it out and see to what extent we like it or what some remaining issues are. And overall, you can see that now this idea of table structures, table layouts, is now applied in a bit more systematic way. It distinguishes the individual use cases, the overarching explanations, etc. Still, some issues remain to be fixed. So this is, for instance, the font size problem that is not getting fixed. Some issues with the spacing, the padding here in the text, and also the fact that this gray background here exceeds even further is at least unusual now based on typical consulting slides. So there are some fixes, but it's not perfect yet. And for instance, I of course know that the point with the font sizes is included in the skill file. So this is just one of these challenges when working with AI, that consistency is not always easy to get. And of course, if I would probably now regenerate it once again with the file, maybe it then would pick up on the font size. So overall, I must say it is impressive how quickly now the system improved just within a few months. And as I also predicted at the last time I created the last video with a similar test, the speed will be incredible, and likely even this year we will see systems that out of the box address all the issues I just shared in this video. And of course, then it's still worthwhile to create your own skill files to help it even more match the exact style that you want it to meet. And if you're interested in the skill file I created with many of the best practices discussed in the videos, again, it is offered as a free download, link in the video description. So let me know what your best tips are to work with Claude and other systems to create your slides. Trust we can all only benefit from that. If you like this video, please hit the like button, subscribe for more content like this. Big thanks to all the channel members. See you again on this channel next week.